Welcome back to another episode of Teen Minds Redefined, where we are bridging the gap between parents and teenagers, offering insights, fostering understanding. And today I am very excited to have our guest, Natalia Blagoeva, with us. With her rich background in systemic coaching, leadership, and her deep insights into the human advantage in our AI-dominated era, Natalia is here to share her wisdom. So I'm just going to tell people who you are, give them a bit of a bio, and then we can dive in. Natalia. So Natalia is in Zurich, Switzerland. This is the best part, I think, about doing podcasts is that you get everybody globally, and it's so exciting. So anyway, I digress. Natalia has her master's in business administration, her master's in science. She's a systemic coach, a certified consultant in leadership and culture, learning and development, and a family and systemic constellator. She has lived and worked in 5 countries, which includes 20 years of experience as an international C-level executive and 10 years as management consultant, life coach, and trusted partner of change makers. Today, the core focus of Natalia is on supporting humans to not just remain relevant, but to thrive in an era dominated by AI and machines by accessing and mastering key competencies in which we humans outperform the machines. She calls that the human advantage. Natalia does that using the power and wisdom of family and systemic constellations and other systemic approaches. Ultimately, this is about learning what intuition is, how to foster it, and what consciousness, love, joy, and beauty have to do with it. Where inspiration and wisdom come from, and how to tap into them, and how to open the mystery and magic in life, and how to provoke positive change. Natalia is also teaching business and economics. She's the founder of the global community Heart to Heart Online, co-founder and co-host of the Vanilla Weeds podcast, and a master change whisperer. So first of all, welcome. I'm so excited. This bio is like, oh my goodness, where do you go first? But as a teacher for 30 years, I have to go, let's do a vocabulary list here. So let's talk about things like, what is a constellator? What is a change whisperer? And human and moral agency. So tell us about you and what I might have missed that you want people to know. But if you could build in kind of defining those terms that maybe some people are not heard for the first time.
Yes, so first of all, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. We've had other conversations before this one, and it was really yummy, and I'm looking forward to this one with great pleasure. It's a great way also. It's my first kind of more deep conversation for the beginning of this year, so I'm really looking forward to that. In terms of the vocabulary, I like that because I think we live in a world where we use words in a completely different meaning. And what's below that is an exchange of value. So we call democracy something that's maybe not fully democracy. So we have these words and everybody is using them. But it's actually key to start defining them so that we know what we're speaking about. So help me, I forgot which were the words you asked for. So one was
human and moral agency.
Okay, so human and moral agency is about the capacity of us as individuals to take responsibilities for our actions and how we contribute to the world we live in. And for me, we live in a world which is dominated by a feeling that we are insignificant, that individually we are insignificant. And there's these people out there, that's where the democracy comes. So there's these people out there we've elected, and they're going to solve our problems. And human agency is more saying, no, with everything I do. That's, by the way, my understanding of human agency. One can look it up. I mean, there's more precise, probably dictionary understanding, but I'm giving mine and explaining why it's important. With everything we do or we don't, we create the world today the way it is. So if we don't like something in the world today, to me, and that connects with being a change maker. So in order to do any change, it starts with recognizing that with everything we do or we don't do, we create the world the way today it is today. And from that point on, to me, it's I know it's sometimes like people can say, oh, come on. I mean, what have I live a ethical, good life. I'm good contributor to community. How have I contributed to X, to the war there, or this person doing that? But actually we do. With every time we don't react to something, with every time we self-censor what we say or we don't say, we don't speak from the bottom of our soul and heart, we contribute. So without going too much into that, human agency and moral agency is about recognizing our role and stepping into our power. And it's also about overcoming fears, because fear is often what stops us from being true to ourselves. And by the way, when we are not true to ourselves, when we don't speak our truth, when our voice is silenced, it breaks our heart. Totally breaks our heart. So in general, in the worst case scenario, and when I'm saying worst, I don't mean 1 in a million. I mean, a lot of people are there. We live with broken heart. We can't really experience joy in life. And it's kind of devoid of meaning somehow.
Yeah. And so just to for my listeners, I have 2 podcasts, and of course Natalia was on another podcast, and the audience for the other podcast is adults, usually women, entrepreneurs changing their lives, 40 and over. And we started talking about how we can kind of back up, and how do we tap in, and how do we move forward, and how do we step into our power. And what made me really want Natalia on this podcast is because why do we have to wait until we're 40 and 45 and 50 to go, oh, this is not what I wanted. I've been living this path for forever. And now at 45, 50, oh, now I see what's important, and I see how I need to backpedal. I need to step into my power. So what I wanted to tap into today is, how do we start with our teenagers? How do we start with our kids? How do we teach them now so that when they get to 45, they're not having the same conversations we're having right now? And can you talk about that a little bit, like where we can go from there?
Yes, and I'll talk through what I see as the challenge or the problem. And the way I see it, the title is disconnection. And what I mean by disconnection is, first, and I'll go a little bit historically, so somewhere in the last 100 years, step by step, we disassembled the original communities in which people were living. And people started moving with urbanization and everything else going. People started moving to the big cities. We started breaking up family relationships. And the essence of community. And a lot of the learning, a lot of the wisdom transfer was happening exactly there. So we started breaking these structures. But still, like if we're talking 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, women were at home and they had time to spend more with the children. So despite that this bigger connection was broken, there was still that connection that was working. Then in the last years, I mean, we all know women started working, so we want equal rights. We want to be in the workplace.
Yeah.
But what that meant is, I mean, we don't have time. We know it better than, I mean, every woman I speak to is like busy multitasking, trying to be good professional, good mother, good wife. I mean, it's juggling between all these roles. But the reality, and I'm not talking here blame, I'm talking of reality. The reality is parents don't have time for kids. And also, I mean, to add to that, life has become faster and faster and faster. Stress is becoming bigger and bigger. So that relationship also got broken. Then in the last 10 years, was it 10, 15 years now ago? We came up with this theory, generational theory, which in the beginning I was very fascinated with all these millennials and this generation, that generation. In the beginning, I was very fascinated because it helped me in my work. It helped me understand better different generations. But I think what that did also is created even more separation. It's like millennials are very special. Generation Z, and I forgot all of them, but it became too many, but they're so different. Oh, they're completely different. And we broke even further this natural connection. On top of all that, we're very disconnected from our ancestors in general, because we moved forward, we're more educated, more high social lives we lead. So somehow most grandparents of our generation, not everybody, but a huge number were people living in villages. So we don't relate to them. So always, everywhere is disconnection. And then we have a teenager today in this world in which we adults have difficulty understanding what's happening. So all their natural ties and connections are broken. The school is the other thing, which I'll talk separately about, but that's not doing great either. So, I mean, they're lost. I mean, it's a whole generation that has lost meaning.
Yeah.
And yes, they see the problems in the world more than ever. I work with young people and I know what I'm talking about. I mean, they sound so wise for their age. They talk about things that people my generation still have trouble seeing.
Yeah.
But this doesn't mean, so the fact that they see all that, they see the problems in society, the fact that they see these things doesn't mean they have the wisdom how to move from that seeing into an intent for a meaningful life.
Yeah. And what went through my head when you were talking about the separate generations and how we're identifying generations and we're not now connected to our ancestors, what's going through my head is this term, I want to give them everything I didn't have. I want to do things. And I feel like, but there's things that they did have that you have to bring with you, not have that dividing line. And I feel like even that term, oh, we didn't do that back in the day, but back in the day is your ancestry, is your stories, is your history that we can like bring into, and I think too, what also sticks with me is when you talk about the dividing lines between generations is I feel physically sick when I hear somebody say, oh, those millennials, or oh, that Gen X, or oh, that Gen Z, because we all have something in our generation.
Absolutely. We are made up by the times we live in.
Yeah.
That's normal. And yes, times are changing faster now. But the core of being human is always the same. That's what people are misreading. They're talking about, okay, so for example, in my family, like what you were talking about, us not having the things they had. it was more about material things. So for example, my father was proud he could put meat every day on the table because they were eating it, I don't know, once per month or something. But that's so wrong, thinking that because they ate it once per month, we should eat it every day. That's just as unhealthy, probably, if not more. So I'm just using this as an example, that it's looking at the wrong things. It's looking at material things. It's looking at kind of even the easiness of life, like all the ways in which our life has gotten easy are making us sick.
Yeah.
Because we need to, like, for example, gardening or doing agricultural work, we need this connection with the earth, with the nature, with people are saying now we need to touch the ground, the earth, the soil with hands. Our feet need to walk bare feet on the ground. I mean, there are things that also movement. We're trying now to go to fitness salons because we live in cars. And, yes, it's easier, but everything with like the so-called progress has brought problems. But the core for me is none of that matters. What matters is there's a deeper connection, deeper understanding of what it means to be a human being, and there are no generational difference there. There's nothing has ever changed.
Yeah,
and that's what we don't understand, I think.
Yeah, and if we could just, my kids are both in the millennial age, and I find I'm so impressed. I'm impressed with their awareness of the environment, and I'm impressed with their actions around protecting the environment, not just talking about it, not just complaining about what we've done, but actually moving on and having the courage to call us out, which I think is amazing. My daughter calls me out on so many things. It's unbelievable, and I'm so grateful because I don't want to move forward, without knowing the right information and having the right terms and knowing, in this world where we're hearing, oh, everybody's offended by everything, but we're learning that there are things that hurt the human race, and if we can say, oh, okay, I won't say that anymore. Why am I offended? Because you're hurt. I'm just going to move forward. And I find that the kids coming up now are saying that's not okay. You can't say that, and stepping into their power a little more. But we can do one of two things as parents, right? We can either say, oh, everybody's offended and you can't tell me and you don't know, and back in the day, or we can say, oh, okay, I didn't know that was offensive. I didn't know that made you feel this, that, or the other. I didn't know that segregated you. So can we put that? I feel like sometimes there's a little bit of an ego going on there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because we somehow look at that as a one-way street that adults are supposed to teach children. But I think it always has been two-way street. And it's just, we need, the core for me is we need this connection. We need it and they need it. And they also need our wisdom, because without going into the details of what I'm gonna say, you were talking about how they come with these things that, oh, that's wrong, or that's, there are cases when things are happening for good, and there are cases, and I know that for certain, when values are being exchanged with a different agenda, which I don't agree with, and I think it goes against the values that I stand for, I guess. So there are cases when we have the wisdom to see what really is happening in some situation and share that wisdom with them. So there are times we need to agree with them, and there are times we need to tell them, no, just wait here. I want you to think, because this is also happening and that is also happening, and look at the big picture, because we can't always see it.
No.
And one of the things where it hurts us as humanity is that these broken relationships means we don't want to learn from them, they don't want to learn from us. And we need each other. We need each other. So for me, probably the most important thing a parent can do is keep building that relationship, rebuilding the connection with within the family, within looking into ancestry. I mean, in general, I'm not talking just our own lineage, but like there's so much wisdom in previous generations, like kind of before industrialization, like going back even to Aboriginal knowledge. There's so much knowledge that we have lost on the way. And to me, the answers to many of our problems today is exactly there.
So how do we try to start resolving the conflict like that, foster the understanding and the conflict that we would have as a parent with a teenager, or as a parent with, doesn't even have to be a teenager, parent with a kid? How do we start looking at like the current era? We know what's happening. There's AI, there's all of these things in our world. And then we have the basics of raising these beautiful human beings. Like, how do we connect that? How do we foster that? How do we look at the conflicts there, and how do we start resolving that?
So I don't know so much about teenagers. I don't have kids, by the way, but I know about humans in general.
Yeah.
And the way that I look at this is always, if there's a conflict, doesn't matter which human being, if there's something, if we don't like each other, if there's something that we need to start with, what triggers us, because usually in a conflict there's something that triggers and people get into this automatic behavior and they say to each other, I can't stand you, and basically communication cannot happen.
Yeah.
So to me, it's very important to first find out the triggers, and we always start with ourselves. So if a relationship with someone else is not working and we hate them, we can't stand them, or they trigger us, or they hurt us, we need to start with, what is this? It's like an acupuncture point, or it's like it's actually not so much an acupuncture point, but it's like it's a wound. It's like something that hurts us, and we need to regroup, see what triggers us, and go to a place where we're not triggered. So this is a more complicated thing, but it's the simple way of saying this is, when something triggers us, there's something we need to change in ourselves, there's something we need to learn, there's something we need to heal. Once we understand that and approach every human being with a sense of, okay, I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to see, who is this person? And for example, if the other person is very angry, like teenagers sometimes are very angry and they don't want to speak, they don't want to communicate. You need to go to a place where you say, okay, I accept this anger. I give it a place. It's okay. I want to learn more. So it goes through inclusion. There is a reason that person is reacting. And if you start trying to tell them that's the wrong thing to do, trying to, how should I explain this? Trying to either control them or teach them in a traditional way, it doesn't work. You need to first accept and include who they are and what makes them behave like that. And even now, we don't need to tell it to them, but in our mind, we can say, thank you. Thank you to this anger. Thank you to this behavior. I know it sounds a bit irrational, but it's about accepting that there's some message here. This anger is a message of something, and we want to explore it. So it's a bit like illness. Like sometimes illness comes as a message to tell us that we need to make some change.
Mm-hmm.
And healing starts with accepting, thanking for this message, because now we can approach things wiser, better.
Yeah.
So it's the same here. We need to understand they're reacting to something. All humans react 95% because of things they're not aware of. And we're only 5% in the visible area. That's what people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying that we're like an iceberg. The majority of things are invisible to us. So they are reacting to something. So instead of judging them, blaming them, fearing the situation, trying to control it, trying to come from a place of authority, we need to come from a place of acceptance, inclusion of that emotion, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And a place of equality also, rather than dominance or superiority. It's kind of a humbleness and a true curiosity to get to know the other human being.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a very strong belief in behavior. I'm quoting behavior is just a communication. Something has happened and it's my way or the kid's way, or in any sense, in whether kids are nonverbal or verbal, disabilities, no disabilities. Behavior is just an underlying, I'm not meeting an expectation that you have for me, or I'm not meeting an expectation I have for me, and this is how I'm communicating to you. And it can be anger, and it can be throwing things around, and it can be the silent treatment, whatever it is. But again, like you're saying, it's saying there's something here going on with me, and this is how I'm telling you. This isn't,
Exactly.
yeah, which I think is so important. And I also, I love that you're saying, thanks for this anger, because how much of a problem has it been where we, maybe women, maybe children, I don't know, have been told to calm it down, stifle it down. I don't want to hear that you're angry. You're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to voice how you feel. And then we have, then it takes us years of therapy to say, I do have a voice. I can say how I feel. And it doesn't matter if I'm offending somebody. This is how I feel. And so, like, how many women, even with the other podcast, when I'm talking to women all the time, say, yeah, I didn't know I could say this. I didn't have a voice. I didn't step into my power because I didn't want to make anyone else feel bad.
Mm.
And it's just what we're teaching our kids. We don't want to teach our kids these things, so I like
Because
that awareness.
It's about awareness and not suppressing things, but learning to express them in a learning to, like in general, learning to express ourselves without judgment, blaming, pointing fingers, it's a life's work.
Mhm.
Also learning to listen
Yeah.
and ask clean questions, clean of intent, clean of judgment, clean of blame, just pure curiosity. And
I like that. Clean questions. I like that.
it's a methodology. Actually, you can, you and your listeners can Google it, and there's on YouTube very nice examples of clean questions. Yeah, it's a very interesting methodology. But in general, the art of asking questions is it's once the question is formulated correctly, the solution comes by itself. It's more difficult to formulate the right question. Yeah. What I wanted also to say is when we are in the state of not being triggered, not being judgmental, not being fearful, blameful, and so on, and we're truly connected to ourselves, there isn't a human being in the world we can't connect. Period. I mean, if we're normal human, not normal. What is normal? We're all not very normal, but
Yeah.
unless there's something completely off with
Right.
the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say that again? Because I like that.
There isn't a human being in the world
Yeah.
we cannot connect to heart and actually experience feeling of joy and love of being together. There isn't such human being. But in order to be able to do that, we need to be in a state of mind, openness, curiosity, lack of judgment, lack of fear. Fear is a huge one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're in that state, even if the other person is not, step by step, if we keep being in that state, they're gonna get into that state as well.
Yeah.
But it goes through that acceptance. It goes to that real desire to connect human to human. I don't know how else to say it, but really feel that sense of that we're one, and there is this foundational values that are the same for every human being.
Yeah.
It's just about reaching that state where we are the same.
And it sounds like one of the very first steps to that is being very aware that when you're feeling angry or you're feeling offended or you're feeling whatever it is, and I'm going to say this in relationship to your kid, your teenager, we need to take a step back and say, why is this triggering me? Why is this making me angry? What is it here? And I've done so many interviews now with experts, and while we're trying to support our teenagers and teach them how to function and how to be aware and how to express and how to create and all of that, I feel like all of our conversations go back to our parents need to do some work on themselves. And it's not a blame game. Like I think parents go, oh, I've done it, now they need to do it. But I feel like every conversation I've had with an expert is like, that goes back to me needing to do work on myself. If I don't want my kid to fail and I want to teach them all these lessons, that comes back to me. Why is that bothering me that they can fail? Why is this bothering me that they want to experiment or create or do something different or not take a linear approach to education? Any of those things, I feel like it goes right back to parents needing to go, maybe I need to do a little work on myself. And not only is that amazing, but your kids see you do work on yourself. Your kids could see you get up in the morning and find your corner and do your meditation and do your journaling and do all of these things. And what's your power and what's your purpose and what makes you light up in the world, and nurture and foster that, as opposed to this, oh, that's not the way it goes and that's not how life is, and suck it up, buttercup, like all of these things. Like it always seems to come back to, you need to do some work now on yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's it's not exactly the meaning of human agency, but for me it's connected to, again, back to that responsibility. Our world is the way it is because of how we show up in it. And the way to change it is changing it is by keep changing ourselves. And some people are gonna say, oh, what can I change myself? But it's actually not true, because that's where the systemic knowledge comes. Like we're like a one big organism. So when one cell in the body starts changing, it influences the other cells. And it's the same on human level. Like when life picks up a life-affirming pattern, it replicates it. Like that's how everything living evolves.
Okay.
So it's the same in human relationships.
Mhm.
When we come into the world in a more life-affirming way, in a more healthy way, it gets picked up by kids, by partners, by the and the effect actually is huge.
Wow.
And we don't recognize that. We
I've
don't
never heard
recognize
anyone say that before. That is so good.
it's been proven now also. I mean, people are trying to work on proving these things, but yeah, I'm convinced. So there's a lot of people who are studying living systems in general, because the last 100 years we've lived in this, since industrialization, in this sense of we are in control of nature, we are the master of things. But now in the last like 10, 20 years, we're really going back to, we really don't understand a lot of things about life,
Yeah.
like how things function, right?
Mhm.
In nature, in the earth, in our body. I mean, there's so much we're still discovering. But a lot of people are going now with the mindset of nature is the master, and or God, depending on what you believe in.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
there is this bigger master.
Yeah.
And we can learn how to do things not differently, but it's about tuning into this system of life
Mhm.
and playing our role. So not being the cancer cell, so to say, but being a good, healthy cell in this organism of life.
That's, I love how you put that, and I've never heard it put that way. So that's something that's going to stick with me. So, and now I want, before we have to get to the end, I really wanted to touch on, find out what you can say about intuition, because that's your expertise, but intuition and decision making. But when we're talking about how do we foster that with our kids, how do we foster really tapping into your intuition and making decisions based on that? And if it's not a decision you want your teenager to make, but they are making it from their intuition, how do we step back and say, okay, I have to let go of that. I have to let you, I can't foster this and then control it at the same time, I think is my question.
So first it starts with us starting to understand. I think in our previous conversation, I told you that I asked ChatGPT, how do humans outperform machines? And it came up with this list. So it said, I'm just gonna read the list: consciousness and self-awareness, creativity and imaginations, emotions and feelings, flexibility and adaptability, intuition and judgment, moral reasoning and ethics. So this is about this moral agency, social interaction and communication, purpose and motivation, learning and development, sensory experience and physical capability. So this list, this laundry list, for me is the essence of what I call the human advantage, but it's the skills we need to develop today. I mean, we've always had them. There's no human being without this, but we've also suppressed a lot of this, because in the last years we've put science in the sense of if it cannot be proven, it's not true. We've put that ahead of everything. And we've actually cut connection with core aspects of being human, which our ancestors knew. Our ancestors knew more about consciousness, intuition, and things like that than we do now. Why? Because we blocked that part of ourselves. Not fully, it's not fully blocked. Because if you talk to a top artist, if you talk to a top leader, they always tell you the biggest thing in their work is intuition, and creativity comes from some source. And it's kind of, it just comes and we don't know, some of them can explain it, others not, but they will all tell you it's not about rational things we learned in school. And today, why is this more important today than ever? Is because machines are taking the routine jobs. So actually everything that education was preparing us for is now, machines know more facts than us. They're better experts. Machines, I mean, in the broad sense, machines and technology in general. So a lot of the things that we were learning in school are useless in the sense that the machines are going to do them better than us. The things we need to learn is these things in which we outperform the machines, because these are the jobs of the future, jobs of creativity, imagination, intuition, inspiration. I mean, these are the things machines cannot do.
Yeah.
So we owe it to ourselves to start opening up what is consciousness, what is awareness, where's intuition coming from, and start opening. There's so much information if we open up to it, because more and more people are tapping into these things. So intuition, I don't think there's a human being who doesn't know the word, but a lot of people are mixing up instinct and intuition. So that's the first distinction I want to make. Instinct is something that comes from our what's the other word? From a desire for survival, basically. So it's the same. It's the reason why an animal would feel danger and run away. So it's the same on a human being level. There is collective, let's say, information that we have gathered as species throughout time, and we instinctively know what's right and to do in a certain situation. But that comes from a point of view of survival and safety. And that's very different from intuition. Intuition comes from connection to a bigger field of collective consciousness. And that's where it gets difficult, because our way of talking about these things has not really, I mean, we never studied these things, and it gets like very, what's the word? Woo-hoo, exactly. But the reality is we all have experienced intuition. It's this sense of deep knowing that something is right for us. And it comes with this power that, like, if we don't obey it, we actually, like, really feel bad. I mean, it's stronger than our will in general.
Physically, you would feel it.
Not physically. It feels more like broken heart if you don't follow it. It's more like you know what the right thing to do, but you're not doing it because of fear, because that's not what you're supposed to do. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
From me being a teenager. So I was born in a communist country. And when I was a teenager, it was kind of last years of communism before the transformation. I'm emphasizing this because I didn't know, my sense of the world was very limited. I didn't know about a lot of things I know today. And when I was 17 or 18, I went to my mother and father. They were asking me what I want to study. And I told them psychology, philosophy, sociology. I honestly didn't know what these words mean. I honestly neither could define them, nor I knew somebody practicing them. Neither, these were not widely accepted. I mean, they existed as professions, but they were very few people. It wasn't like today. Today there's a lot of emphasis on that. It was very rare professions. Nobody in my family or anybody I've ever known has studied these things. I don't know where it came from. I just said, this is what interests me. And what did my parents said? Forget it. They're accepting 1 or 2 people in the university per year. Some years they even have 0 years because they're so rare, these specialties at that time. It's not practical. Then I said, okay, so I accept it. It's not practical. And I said, okay, maybe economy. My mother said, no way, because of this, that, and the other. And she had, again, her very rational reasons. I went to study engineering because my father was very prominent scientist and university rector and a lot of things. So I went for the, it's not family profession because my mom is not an engineer, but my sister also became an engineer. But I went there just because I wanted out. I wanted to go to university and I wanted out of home so that I can start my own journey. And this was the easy way. So I followed it because it was the easy way. So when I go and really, I cried all through first and second year of students. I cried. I hated it. I hated it. It was dreadful. I finished with education just because I was ashamed. I was coming from a very kind of family that it was unacceptable to work. So I finished it so that I have the diploma that everybody, that's kind of it's the thing I'm supposed to do. Fast forward a few years later, I saw an ad. So this is now capitalism, market economy, fast forward. And I saw an ad for a job. It was from actually an American. I didn't understand what I would be working. I didn't understand what is this about. Nothing. I understood nothing other than I need to follow it. And I started a 20-year career, which ended up with a lot of success and a lot of good experiences. In my job, I was actually like the operations director for a group of companies. And my job was related to people, so sociology, a lot, economy, philosophy, all these things were the essence of what I'm doing, including the economy, none of the engineering.
Wow.
So where did I know at that age that this is what I should be studying? Where did I know it from? I cannot explain it. I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what these words mean. So I had no capacity to argue myself with my parents. I mean, how do I argue myself?
Yeah, so it's just a feeling, Mom. It's just a feeling.
So the good news is, sooner or later, these things calibrate themselves. So I found my way. So it didn't matter. And actually, it was good. I studied automatics at the end. So maybe my understanding of computers and technology in general helped me in life. Nothing bad, but it was also lost years. I could have done something else with these years. So where is this intuition coming from? So there is this fields around us. And the methodology of family and systemic constellations is a methodology of tapping into that field. There's this field of knowing. It's like a World Wide Web without the computers. It's like an information field, and there's ways into tapping into that. It comes to us as this sense of deep knowing, depending on which sense is the most developed. For some people, it comes as visions. For other people, it comes as words, insights. To me, it comes with this sense of deep knowing. So it's a bit different for individuals. But back to your question, so how can, by the way, I had situations in my corporate history where I would go to my partner / boss and say, this situation is wrong. This person is doing something wrong. I cannot say what it is, but it's something bad. And it's not going to end up good. But I couldn't explain it. And my boss would say, oh, you're jealous. Oh, you just this, that, the other. Because I couldn't explain it. And we all have such situations. We have a hunch. There's something we know, but we don't have data to prove it. Afterwards, I was right. He told me 10 years, 20 years later, oh, you were right in those situations. But it took, in the meantime, we had a lot of negative consequences because I didn't act on that. So back to the question with the parents, it's tough, right? Because we've acquired some knowledge for our life. We know, we see what works, what doesn't. And we do not want our children to take a journey and suffer and things like that. To take a journey that's not gonna work. And we kind of want to give all our knowledge to them so that we don't make the same mistakes. First, that's not possible. So for a lot of things, people need to make their own mistakes. The second thing is, I think in such situations, the usual thing what happens, which happened in my situation also, we get into this inability to communicate. We get into positions of everybody has a position. And in my case, I lean to power and authority, and I shut up. Some kids will be angry and will start doing other things. So every kid will react differently. But the only answer to this is what I was speaking earlier, to go to a place of acceptance, inclusion, include everything. Say, okay, so they say this, I say that. It's all part of the picture. And kind of zoom out and look at things from perspective and be able to have heart-to-heart, human-to-human, calm conversations. And if the kid, for example, the teenager or a kid is, I mean, you would know it if you take the time to listen to that person, to really see where their heart is. You're gonna know, are they really wanting to take this decision from the heart? Because there's something deeper to, and here it is, my easiest formula. Are your eyes shining first? If your eyes are not shining, why not? And then, so it's your responsibility to get yourself to a place where your eyes are shining. And then are the eyes of the person across me shining? When are they shining? When do we see this spark for life and they're interested in, this is it. This is what we need to follow. And I have goosebumps saying it. This is what we need to follow. If we see that they're acting out of place of fear, then it's wrong. Then we need to stop them, even if it sounds good to us. Like I see a lot of kids, for example, here I'm in Zurich, and I work with young people exactly at that age, like more like 18 to 20. And some of them, they tell me, oh, I'm going to study finance and then become wealth management consultant. Why are they saying it? Because these are the wealthiest people they see around. I mean, there's plenty of them here in Zurich. Is it their journey? 9 times out of 10, I don't think so. So when we as a parent catch that, what do? Are we happy we're going to be wealthy and we support that? Or do we say, you know what? Like I had this student. We were doing online lessons during the lockdowns. And I saw these paintings on his walls. And he was one of those. His father is an investor and he's going to study finance, and it turned out the paintings on the walls are his own paintings, and they were amazing. So do you push your kid to, I mean, in his case, I was telling him he can combine both. I mean, you can have something that is artistic together with something else which gives you the career, maybe income that you desire. I mean, it's possible to combine things, but what's not good is to support because this is the practical solution and to kill that spark.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
And I know I have to respect some time here, but I want to say this. I want to say that in your example with your parents, I see it all the time in school where parents ask their kids questions, but they already have the answer they want in their head. They already know what they want them to say. And instead of, like you said, noticing when they answer, do their eyes light up? Does anything light up? Or are they robotically telling you what you want to hear? And this is where it starts. This is where we don't have to let our teenagers take a 30-year path in something that doesn't light them up. Because when they're 16 and 15 and 14, you're asking the questions, what do you want to be when you grow up? Are you really listening to what they want to be? Are you really watching them shine? And catch them doing things that they love and say, oh, I noticed how happy you were painting that picture or writing that book or talking about a poetry, or I noticed that you lit up there. You don't light up doing your math homework. So let's get the math off the list, check it off, do what we need to do, but let's foster that.
Exactly.
Because that's where you're rich. That's where you're wealthy. Yeah.
And exactly, I wanted to say about the money also aspect. People who are lit the way we're describing it, in every profession can make a lot of money.
Yes. 100%.
And people who are not lit are going to be miserable and not make a lot of money, even in the most well-sounding professions.
Yes, agreed. I think, you know what, I want to do this again with you because I want to now focus. We talked a little bit about education and what schools are and are not doing. And I want to dive into that with you on another one and just talk about school, because that's where my 30 years is from too. And so I think we can really pull out some important stuff out of that conversation.
Yeah, because the whole other conversation of how education is formed, driven, and what it teaches. Yeah, it's a whole other ballgame.
Yes, 100%. Well, thank you, Natalia. I am so grateful. It's so enjoyable I could just listen to you all day long. Your wisdom, and you just had like 15,000 golden nuggets here that I'm going to pull out of our conversation and put in the show notes, and people can have a look at that again. But tell us where we can find you. Tell us where our listeners can get some more information from you.
Yes, thank you for saying what you said. It's a real pleasure, and I always say the conversation is a result of the two people, three people. So it's a real pleasure to have this conversation with you. People can find me. I have a website which is with my name, nataliablagoeva.com. I also recently started on Substack to write, so welcome people to subscribe there. I'm writing on different themes. And in general, we can find me on LinkedIn and all the other platforms. Yeah.
Excellent. And I'll put all that at the bottom of the show notes so people don't have to memorize that. Thank you again. I'm so grateful, Natalia, and we will talk again for sure.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Awesome day.
Have a great start of your new year.
Same for you. Same for you.
Thanks again for listening. Teen Minds Redefined, and we will see you next time.